Well, good morning, everybody. I go to a lot of churches all over the place. My name is Phil Tuttle. In addition to being one of the elders here, I lead a ministry called Walk Through the Bible that you get a little taste of today, but I get to go to churches all over the place. This is the best greeting time of any church in America. Usually it's some awkward 30 seconds, and this is like, Joe, there's two people over here that you haven't met yet. Joe got everybody, but he got everybody but two people over there today. It's absolutely amazing. I want to welcome you to something we call Walk Through the Old Testament, or OT Live. How many of you have ever been to Walk Through the Old or New Testament before? Raise your hand. Keep them up. Okay. This is not an entrance requirement to heaven, but it may affect the quality of your dwelling place. Just saying. So we will start it out this morning. I met a couple a little bit ago. This is their first Sunday, and I'm like, oh my, what a week to visit. It's not always like this. Please come back next week. You'll probably like it better. But by starting it in the worship service, you see, we have a problem. We're going to survey the Old Testament. It's like, that's going to be boring, and that's going to be hard. It's neither of those things, but by starting it, in 30 or 40 minutes now in the sermon slot, you get to taste it, and then you go, oh man, that was fun. I want to come back. I want to bring my kids. So that's what we're going to do. This is the kickoff, as Steve said. The next 6 weeks, he's going to take us on through the highlights of the Old Testament, especially the big themes that are there. Together today, we're going to discover 40 people and events that are the essence of the Old Testament, the big story. How many of you like jigsaw puzzles? Seriously? Because there's some research has shown a close correlation between mental illness and a love of jigsaw puzzles. I like them, so I'm right there with you. When I was growing up, I grew up in Normal, Illinois. Some of you know that. It's a real place. A woman from our town married a guy from another little town down the road, and the clipping in the paper actually said, normal woman marries oblong man. That's happened twice in history, as a matter of fact. But my grandparents lived over in Iowa, Sheraton, Iowa, and every time we'd visit my dad's parents, we'd get there and there was a card table set up, and there was always a partially completed jigsaw puzzle. And Grandma Tuttle, or Wah as we called her, would say, young man, there's work to be done, and you cannot go home until that puzzle's finished. I believed her. I think my parents believed her too, because when I hit junior high, they brought a 5,400-piece jigsaw puzzle, solid red on both sides, and said, we'll be back for him when he turns 18. So I didn't understand that at the time. A lot of times, the study of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, that first 3/4 of the Bible, is a lot like a jigsaw puzzle. Steve brings a message on Psalm 23. You learn about the Lord being our shepherd. You get a piece of the puzzle. You're stuck in traffic on 285. It's pouring. Listen. To keep your Christianity intact, you turn on a radio preacher. You learn about the call of Moses in Exodus 3 and 4. You get another piece of the puzzle. That's how we have to study the Bible, one piece at a time, because it's so rich, it's so loaded, you got to look at it under the magnifying glass, under the microscope. But God's also created our minds so that we crave order. Hey, I wonder if Esther and Sarah ever hung out at Starbucks together. I wonder if Moses knew Zerubbabel. You can't do that on a routine Sunday. That's why Walk Through the Bible was created 41 years ago. We do lots of other things, but this is still the flagship of what we do. Because when you get the big picture, you grasp the heart of God. One of the first times I ever taught one of these, two guys came up at the end in their 20s. One elbows his friend and says, tell Phil what you just told me. And he says, well, it's the first time I've ever been in church. And I said, well, it doesn't usually last this long. Let me say that for you first. But he said, no, tell him what you said to me. He goes, when you got to the end of this and we finally got to Jesus, I said, no wonder you want a relationship with a God like that. That's bullseye for us. That's what we're after. So my job today, what's the first thing you do when you put together a puzzle? What do you do first? Yeah, exactly. This, right? My job today is just to give you the border. Steve's going to fill in some of the main clusters the next 6 weeks, and then we continue building out that puzzle. That's really a lifelong task. Harvard University did an experiment a number of years ago, took two groups of freshmen, A and B, gave them identical jigsaw puzzles. Only Group A got the box cover and Group B did not. Guess which group put together the puzzle fastest? Yeah, it was actually 5 times as fast. This is your federal tax dollars at work. This is a federally funded study here. My kids would have done that for free. Today, I get to give you the box cover of the Old Testament. Now, here's how the structure of the Old Testament. First of all, go ahead and pull that one up, will you, Ruben? There we go. How many letters are there in Old? 3. How many in Testament? 1, 2, 3, 4. See, the questions get tougher as we progress. 9. Take the 3 and the 9, shove them up next to each other. 39. That's how many books are in the Old Testament. Oh, Mildred, it was worth it just for that. Also works for the New Testament. How many letters in New? How many in 9? Whoops, how many in Testament? How many in Testament? But this is new math, so you have to multiply. 3 times 9 is 27. There you go. And it's 3 stacks of books. 17 books of history, 5 books of poetry, 17 books of prophecy. So say 17, 5, 17. Say that. 17, 5, 17. What kind of books? History. 17's a lot to keep track of, so let's subdivide the first and the third. The first 5 are called the Pentateuch. Penta means 5, Tuch means toque. So they named them the 5 Tuchs. Actually, Tuch means book or scroll. So, hey, I got an idea. Let's call the first 5 books 5 books. Having burned ourselves out with that level of creativity, these other 12 are called other history. No need to split up the middle because there's only 5. Over here we have 5 and 12. These are major prophets. These are all written by men and women 18 years of age or younger. No. Important books, books we ought to ignore. Yeah. No. All it means is long books, short books. Some of the biggest struggles of the church in America right now are the themes in these 12 books that most of us hardly ever look at. There may be a connection there. You don't have to read far in your Bible to come to the first thing that God does. This first section we call beginnings. Beginnings, and it's the story of what happens in the book of Genesis. Go ahead and pull that next graphic for me, will you? And the chart that follows it. We're going to talk about beginnings. Go to the chart now. Here's your outline for the next 6 weeks of God's grand story, but we're going to kind of hit some of the high points together now. You don't have to go far at all in your Bible to get to the first thing God does. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God did what? Created the heavens and the earth. So the first event is creation. Say creation. Only say it like you're glad it happened. Ready? Say creation. 1 down, 39 more to go. Now, when we teach this to kids, because we do teach this from like first grade on up, about event number 27 or 28, their minds start to clog up. With adults, it's about event number 7 or 8. So we're going to resurrect how we used to learn as kids. You're going to learn with your whole body. You're going to get into this. So instead of just saying creation, I need you to take all your carry-on luggage, stow it safely and securely underneath the seat in front of you or in the overhead bins. Get your hands free. And we're gonna do this. Remember, here's the church and here's the steeple. Open the doors and see what? How many of you reviewed that today? Not very many. You learned it actively. You learned it as a kid. We're going to learn like kids learn today. Our bodies just got bigger. There's a picture of me on the fridge from high school. I'm 6'1", 147. Ellen's like, what happened? I'm like, it's 6% inflation compounded over 40 years. I still weigh 147. We're just metric now. It's the same. It's just, not much has changed, baby. It's you and me. Come on. Okay. Take your hands like this. What's in your hands? Out of nothing, God makes the whole world. Can you make something out of nothing? Now, Steve and I went to the same grad school. On some essay exams, we came pretty close to making something out of nothing because we weren't always prepared. But take and make a big world and say creation. Here we go. Ready? Creation. Right. Now, unless you just had rotator cuff surgery or something, don't go like creation. Because God made more than Gwinnett County, all right? He made more than Georgia. He made more than the United States. He even made more than planet Earth. He made it all. So you have a big God, make a big world. Ready? Here we go. Creation. Creation. Perfect tropical garden paradise. It's a great place to live. The capstone of his creation, he made the first human, Adam. And he says, Adam, you need to be in charge. You need to have dominion over this place. Name the animals. Now, he had made male and female animals, and so they theoretically, we can assume they're reproducing. Now he's getting more outnumbered. God delays the creation of Eve. We don't know how long. Why do you think he did that? There's not many options. Maybe God just forgot. But God doesn't just forget. The only option that satisfies my mind is the delay is intentional to build the need, to build the hunger in Adam. And when he sees her for the first time, he just goes, whoa, man. And God goes, yeah, that's what she shall be called. It's not just the name for the door of the restroom to keep us from going in the wrong place, guys. Whoa, man. Oh, okay. He's delighted. She's like me, but ooh, she's delightfully different too. It's glorious. Creation, perfection. Make a big world and say, creation. Now your hands are up here. Some of you are comfortable here, depending on your church background. The church I grew up in, if you raised your hand, you better have a really good question, okay? Drop your hands and say, fall. Satan comes along in the form of a serpent. Hey, Eve, did God say you can't enjoy any of this? See how he twists God's word just an eighth of a turn? That's why we better know the Bible, because Satan knows it. And the best lies have a good bit of truth in them. No, we can enjoy all of this, just the one tree we're not supposed to eat of. Well, you know why God said that? Because he knows if you eat of the fruit of that tree, your eyes will be open, your mind will be illumined. You'll be just as smart as he is. God's holding out on you. He's keeping his best from you. Eve believed that. Adam believed that. They both ate of the fruit. I always was taught it was an apple. But then when we studied this in Hebrew, we found out it's actually a banana because it was the most appealing of any fruit. So there you go. You walked right into that, didn't you? See, all day long, when you think it's safe to doze off, there's 100 more sick jokes like that coming. In that instant, sin entered into the world. And God is loving, but he's also holy, and our sin and God's holiness don't go along with each other very well. Sin, they didn't learn from that mistake. Sin began to spread like malignant cancer, like a forest fire out of control. In fact, we see the effects of it today. We see the weather all messed up with yet another hurricane coming along. We see the tragic mass shooting. We see racism tearing churches and communities apart. All of that is a result of the fall of the human race. By Genesis 6, the Bible says the thoughts and intentions of people's hearts were evil continuously. It's not just that we wanted to do good things and we sometimes mess up. It's not just we have a software problem, all right? We have an operating system problem. We have a virus called sin that distorts everything about our lives. Well, God, he loves us, but he says, you're breaking my heart. And he sends judgment in the form of a what? Flood. Take your hands like this and say flood. Flood. We have visual aids if you want to walk out the doors. It's probably happening in our parking lot even today. Steve moved here from Texas to help his cultural adjustment. We'll say it the way they say it in Texas. They say flood. Flood. Big flood, right? Does everyone die in the flood? No, because, and this is something, if you hang out at the bridge any time at all, I hope that you'll pick this up. You'll hear it in Steve's teaching more than you will in most pastors any place. Whenever you see God's judgment or discipline, look inside there. You'll always find His mercy and grace. Are you glad that we serve a God who's big on second chances and new beginnings? Because I need it. Flood. Does everyone die in the flood? No, He chooses a man named Noah. And anybody know Noah's wife's name? Mrs. Noah. That's the second time I've caught you, okay? It's Joan. Remember Joan? Joan of Arc? No, we don't know her name. Noah, Mrs. Noah, 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law, get in the ark that he builds, and they supernaturally sail to safety. They get off the ark, and God says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the whole earth." They recognized His voice. God's always got that voice in all the movies. They knew it was Him talking. They were fruitful and they multiplied. That part was actually pretty fun. But they didn't spread out and fill the whole earth. Instead, they're going to build a tower and they're going to get to heaven, but they're going to do it on their terms. If you look at all the major religions of the world other than Christianity, and Christianity I don't even think in some ways is a religion at all because it's a relationship with the living God. But the rest of the world's great religions are all people finding a way to do enough good things to satisfy enough rules to work our way back into God's good graces. And it's impossible. It's impossible. One day they're building away, and I think the Bible doesn't give us all these details. Use your imagination a little bit. They're on about floor 32. They're on schedule, under budget. It's a very advanced culture back then. Don't sell them short. And all of a sudden, the foreman looks down and he yells, he goes, "Yo, Charles, send up some more 2x4s and some bricks." And Charles goes, "Quiero presentarle a mi amiga. Dicense con novios. We have a problem at the building site." The foreman looks and he goes, Hey, check out Charles. Something's wrong with him. Go help him." And this man goes, "Warum bist du so blass? Wir können wir Frühstück haben?" God confused the languages. I told you I want you to spread out. So everybody who talked like "Quiero presentarle a mi amigo," they went over there. Everybody who talked like "Warum bist du so blass," they clustered here. Everybody who talked like Nissan, Honda, Kawasaki, Datsun, they went a different direction. God confused the languages to spread the world out into nations. Take your hands, pretend like you're prying open elevator doors. Do not really do this. We don't say this at our kids' events. And say nations. Nations. Let's review those 4. Ready? Here we go. Creation, fall, flood, nations. Stand up. Let's do that together. We're not done yet. Don't go home. Here we go. Do it with me. Creation, fall, flood, nations. Do it with 3 or 4 people around you. Do it 3 times. Go. Have a seat. You just learned the first 11 chapters of Genesis. Those are the 4 foundational events. 4 events. Now we're going to learn 4 people. Before we get to the people, though, we got to orient ourselves. How many of you own a Bible? Good. 64%. This is good. How many of you have maps in the back of your Bible? How many of you ever look at the maps in the back of your Bible? 4 people. That's well above the national. We're going to put a map in the back of your mind so that you know it. Before you got here today, Joe and Scott and Randy, the elders, and I helped a little bit. We took this map on the right and we pulled it off the screen. What was on the bottom is now in the back of our auditorium. What was on the top is now in the front. So that means this part of the room, the front, is north. If that is north, what's that? This is east. This is Okay. We're not going to mess with up so you can recalibrate and find your way home. Extra credit. Ooh. You were at the early service. That's not fair. Way down here to the southeast is a city called Would you stand up, please? Not right. And you know how to spell
You are.
Right, you are See how this is easy, all right? Just to the south of is this group of folks here called the Persian Gulf. Been in the news a lot lately, right? There in there's a man called Abraham. His name was Abram, but God changes his name to Abraham. He's married to a woman named Sarah, and God says, Abraham, I'm going to form a covenant with you. That's like a contract, only better because God's involved. Abraham and Sarah, I'm going to bless you with a child. Sarah laughs because she's well past childbearing age. That's physically impossible. And God says, remember that. Remember that. Not just a child, but eventually a great people group, a mighty nation, descendants like sands of the seashore, like stars of the heavens. Lest you think all I care about is that people group, though ultimately through one of your descendants, I'm going to bless every nation, every people group on the planet. We find out later in the Bible as it unfolds that that's the promised Messiah, Jesus Christ. They don't understand all of that. Well, Abraham. Remember all those stars in the heavens? Look up here. This is like the perfect ceiling for this. Just throw a few stars up there and say, Abraham. Just throw a few up there. Say, Abraham. Good, good. They leave where they live. They go up through the Fertile Crescent, and they're going to settle in this area here. If you're in this center section, you made it to the Promised Land. Yeah. Now, I want to tell you, there were people in the first service also sitting here, some of whom are coming back at 1 o'clock. So, it's kind of like later Joshua. Some of them were giants, so there may be some fighting for these seats in the Promised Land. You better get here early. It's had all different names through history. Today we call it Israel. We're just going to call it Israel to keep it simple. Surrounded by 4 bodies of water. First of all, here's Sea of Galilee, Jordan River. Oh man, you're number 23. That would be Michael Jordan. You belong in the Jordan River. Move up a little bit. And that dumps into the Dead Sea. Dead Sea. Okay, sit back down. You had your moment. That's all you got, Joe. Dead Sea. Over there on the west side, everybody over there on the west side, wave to us. That's the waves of the Mediterranean. And this center section is called Israel. One of the first times I taught this when we still lived in Illinois was at this big Presbyterian church. I mean, it was like, for the day, it was a mega church, and it was Presbyterian. Ellen goes, if you get nervous, just talk to the choir. I'm like, the choir's bigger than our church. And they're wearing robes. And I prayed a prayer, God, don't let anything happen today I haven't planned. Boy, is that a dumb prayer. Aren't you glad God doesn't say yes to every prayer? If you're not, then you haven't been back to your 25th high school reunion. Dear God, please let me marry him. All these girls were saying. And then they see me and they're like, dear God, thank you for intervening and not answering. Actually, they didn't even pray that back in high school. I collected mothers-in-law. I didn't collect girls. I was great with the mothers-in-law. Thank you for coming to my support group. I needed to talk about this. Anyway, a guy back there raises his hand and points at the Dead Sea and goes, Mr. Tuttle, may I move over there, please? I'm going, I know they covered this in training, but I don't remember it. What am I supposed to say? I go, why? And he pulls out a business card, and he says, I'm Bob Wilton of Wilton Mortuary, and I just feel more comfortable there in the Dead Sea. That is a true story. To this day, that was probably 1989, to this day, that guy still supports Walk Through the Bible monthly. Somebody in the first service goes, free advertising. I would too. I don't know. So they're going to end up here in this land. But this is Abraham. Abraham and Sarah don't have any kids. And they know the promise of God, but sometimes God's way up there in heaven, and he may not understand how practically things work here on earth. We better help God out. You ever try to help God out? we're going to do his work, but we'll do it our way. There are churches all over metro Atlanta that are dying right now because they're trying to do God's work people's way. It's his work. It's his church. He's going to build it. They take Sarah's servant girl. She has sexual relations with Abraham, and it works. A son is born. His name is Ishmael. This is awesome. And God says, no, read my lips. I said I'm going to give Abraham and Sarah, I'm going to give you a child. That may be the custom of the day, but that's not my plan. And in God's perfect timing, a son named Isaac is born. He's one of those stars, so grab one of those stars, bring it down, and rock him and say, Isaac. Isaac. By the way, what does his name mean? It means laughter. The laughter of mocking has turned into the laughter of joy. That's pretty cool when God does that, huh? Well, Isaac and Ishmael grow up. They both have great people groups. I was training a group in the Middle East once, and this couple named Nabi and Ruba were correcting my geography. Why did you pick her for Ur? It should have been one row over. You know, they live there. And then when he was teaching his practice section, he says, I've personally lost more than 100 relatives in the fighting between the descendants of these two brothers. So the next time you think what we do at home doesn't affect anybody but us, think through that again. So who's this? Abraham. Do it with me. Abraham, Isaac. Isaac has two sons. They're twins. What are their names? Esau and Jacob. Good. Esau's a rugged outdoorsman. His dad wanted to name him Harry. His mom's like, honey, think junior high. It's a rough time for everybody. Don't do that. He shopped at Bass Pro Shop. I mean, he wore Bass Pro Shop. He wore camo to weddings, okay? This was one of those guys. Were you born in a tree stand? No, I wish I had been. One of those guys. His brother was not all hairy. He was smooth-skinned. He was also a smooth operator. His name was Jacob. And Jacob, I mean, from birth, his name means heel grabber, supplanter, deceiver. He's going to catch up with Esau, and he's going to try to surpass him. He steals his brother's birthright. Toward the end of his life, he gets the blessing that the father gives to the firstborn. He dresses up in animal fur, animal skins. You can see I don't shop at Bass Pro, right? And he comes to his dad, and this is with his mom's help. And his dad reaches out and he goes, Esau, is that you? Sure feels like it. Or maybe it's Jacob. No, it's you, Esau. All his life, he's trying to get ahead. He's wrestling with people. Finally, he wrestles with God. That match, none of us can win. You heard Antonio talking about it during worship. You can run from God, but you can't hide. You may decide you're done with him, and he's like, oh, that's too bad, because I'm not finished with you. One old writer years ago referred to them as the hounds of heaven. And when they catch the scent because they love you, he's going to track you down. This is Jacob, like you're wrestling. Pretend you're arm wrestling and say, Jacob. And he finally meets somebody that he can't dominate. And God's messenger says, what's your name? Not because he doesn't know, but because Jacob had to say it. I'm Jacob. I'm a deceiver. God makes us own our own stuff, doesn't he? He says, right. Now I'm going to change your name to Israel, because I'm giving you a different destiny. Who are the first three people? Who's this? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Right, Jacob has 12 sons. You want to practice this with a couple of times with the people around you. His 12 sons were go ahead and do that a couple times. How about we learn one of his sons? Who's the most well-known of his sons? Joseph. And Joseph was Daddy's favorite. In fact, Daddy made him a sport coat. A coat of many colors is how it gets translated for us. How many of you have more than one child? How many of you have a favorite child? We have a favorite son and we have a favorite daughter. And that's good because we only have 2 kids. Once you get past that, you can't play man-to-man. You got to play a zone. I don't know how the rest of you do that. It's challenging enough for us with two. Joseph is Dad's favorite, and Dad makes no secret about it. Joseph comes out to his friends who are all out, his brothers who are all out working in the fields. There they are. There's 11 of them. And he's like, hey, guys, guess what? I had a dream last night. In my dream, there were 12 bales of wheat, and your 11 bowed down to mine. Isn't it great what God's going to do? Oy vey, you out working in the field with us? That would be a dream right there. A while later, guys, I had another dream. This man is not a quick learner. You got to know your audience. There were 12 stars in the heavens and the sun and moon. Your 11 stars and the sun and moon, I guess that's Mom and Dad, bowed down to my star. They really did not think he was a great leader. They thought he was a hot dog. You know what a hot dog is? A show-off? And they really did not relish the fact that in terms of Dad's love, they could never catch up. So finally, one chilly day, they mustered up enough courage. They were going to kill him. I was teaching this where Tony Evans is a pastor, and I had this lady in this wild outfit, and we called her Josephine, and we're acting this out. And I said, had not another sandwich by the name of Reuben intervened, and she took my microphone. It was clipped on here. The cord was inside my shirt. She pulls it. I'm following her. And I said, had not another sandwich by the name of Reuben intervened. She goes, his buns would have been toast. And I'm like, I looked at her, and she goes, that's where you were going, right? I go, no. But you took us there, so we're there now. Let's go with it. This was amazing. Rejected by his brothers. Sold to a caravan going to Egypt, which is that far exit sign in that corner. Look at it. That's where Egypt is, way down to the southwest. That's going to become important later in our story, right after lunch. There he's sold to Potiphar. He faithfully works for Potiphar, given all sorts of authority. Then he's falsely accused of sexual harassment by Potiphar's wife. He's jailed. Promises are made and broken to him. Eventually he's released because he can interpret dreams, and Pharaoh's had a couple of dreams, and he can't make any sense of them. Joseph explains the dreams. Pharaoh, there's going to be 7 years of great harvest, followed by 7 years of famine. Better prepare during the 7 years of good time. Anybody wish the 7 years before 2008 that you'd maybe put 20% of your income in savings? Yeah, we didn't do it either. That's what he says you better do during the 7 years of good times, during the bull market. Put some cash away. Then comes 7 years of famine. It's exactly as God says. And the famine's not just in Egypt, it hits here too. And the descendants of Jacob, now there's about 70 of them. Who wants these people to be starved out and die? Well, ultimately it's Satan. Because through this family line will come the promised Messiah, Jesus. And if he can kill off this family line, it's like he's sawing down Messiah's family tree before he's ever born. So anti-Semitism always has its roots in Satan himself. Just file that away. That's the heart of racism in general. When we put down another people group to make ourselves feel better. God is never the author of any of that. Just be confident of that. Well, eventually Jacob goes, why are you sitting here? Why are you go down to Egypt. They have grain. Who's in charge of the grain? Joseph, their brother. This is his chance for payback. You ever wish that you could be God for like one day? Remember when Jim Carrey got his chance at that in the movie? Didn't end very well. I don't think I'd do much better than he would. Ever have revenge fantasies? If I could just, God for a day, I'd make some things right. Not just personally. I'd fix some big stuff in the world. Would you? Or would you be like when they planted kudzu here to stop erosion? because it grows slowly, and surely it won't eat up entire forests, will it? Every human solution always comes with unintended consequences, side effects. They bow down before Joseph, just like was promised years ago. This is payback time, but he doesn't pay him back. Even after Father Jacob dies, now he's going to get even, but he doesn't. Instead, he says, you meant it for evil. He doesn't sugarcoat it. We don't do people any good when we go, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, you broke my heart. No big deal. I got multiple hearts. Don't minimize it. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And some of the people that I love the most at the bridge are the people who will tell you their stories in a small group, usually, that it not one wheel fell off, 4 wheels fell off. And sometimes people kick those wheels off. And yet you hear them say, I'd never want to go through that again. But you know what? It's through that time I knew that God is totally dependable. That's when I learned it. And I wouldn't trade the relationship that he and I have for anything. So no, I don't want to relive it. But man, I'm glad he brought me to where I am today. God meant it for evil, or people meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. This is Joseph. He's our 4th character. Go like this. Say Joseph. All right, let's review the 4 people. Ready? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Now, from time to time today, I will say, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Right now, that's no big deal because we're at the beginning. But about 2:17, you're going to be tempted, yes, you are going to be tempted to whine. I should have stayed home and watched football today. It's raining outside. It's cold. I can't learn this much. I'm not a kid. That will wreck the whole momentum of this. So when I say, let's go all the way back, look at your hands. They come together in a fist. Let's go all the way back spontaneously with no coaching. Then 5 times you'll say, go, 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 right? Not 4 times because that's not enough. Not 6 times because that's irrational exuberance and we just don't want to get carried away. Let's practice this. Let's go all the way back. Go, go. And now see, you were asleep. And then I'll say to the beginning, you'll stand up. We'll review everything we've learned. Then you'll turn to your neighbor and give him a high five. That's like a holy kiss, but you can't get the flu from it. So it's better. It's better. Let's go all the way back. Go, 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 go. To the beginning. Yeah. As you jump out of your seats. Steve Pruitt, I need your help. Where is Steve? Steve. Come on up here. We're going to review this twice. I'll lead it the first time. My buddy, our lead pastor, can lead it the next time. Because you may want to review this every week, and I'm not going to be here every week because I got to go travel. So just watch. Let's watch. Are you ready? Yes. Say ready. Here we go. Creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Give yourselves a hand. Mr. Steve, I believe they are awaiting your